Hello, and welcome to The Dull Narrator. Today I will be telling you a story so remarkably uneventful, so impressively ordinary, that it may gently guide your mind into a state of calm, stillness, or perhaps a very pleasant nap. This is the story Whispers Beneath the Sand. The Nile did not intend to keep secrets, yet it always did. Its waters moved in the same direction every day, as if determined to appear predictable, steady, and dull. But beneath that surface, beneath the silt, beneath the banks, beneath the memories of thousands of years, there were stories that refused to stay buried. This is one of them. It begins with something small, a strange crack in a stone doorway, in a chamber no one had entered for 4,000 years. It widens, dust falls, and then, very slowly, history begins to wake up. And what wakes up does not always return quietly to sleep. The world around the Nile was calm on the day the first vibration was felt. It was not felt by many. In fact, it was felt only by one person, a young worker named Neferu, whose job was to carry smooth blocks of limestone from the cutting pits toward the construction ramps. He paused, looking down at the sand shifting beneath his feet. It rippled as though something far below had exhaled. He stared for a long time, but the foreman shouted and Neferu returned to work, assuming the earth had simply adjusted beneath the weight of the growing pyramid. He was wrong. Long before Neferu was born, before anyone alive could remember, there had been another construction, one deeper, older, and far stranger. It had been carved out long before the first pharaoh was crowned, long before the gods had names, long before the Nile had a kingdom around it. The builders of that earlier time left no written language, only marks etched in spirals, as if meaning had to be followed like a path rather than read like a sentence. Every generation forgot a little more about them. Every century buried their traces deeper. But the thing they left behind, hidden far below the sand, had not forgotten anything. For the first several years of the construction of the pyramid, nothing unusual happened beyond the predictable exhaustion of the workers and the predictable decisions of the overseers. The sun rose, the sun set, the workers carried stones, scribes counted food, architects checked angles. Everything moved slowly, carefully, intentionally. In that predictable rhythm, the strange events seemed almost unimportant, little things no one bothered to connect. A laborer reported that a low humming sound echoed from inside the unfinished foundation. A night guard claimed he saw a faint blue glow rising through the cracks in the bedrock. A priest noticed that offerings placed before the uncarved temple walls vanished overnight, leaving behind fine lines in the sand shaped like spirals. Each person assumed they were imagining things. They were not. The first major incident occurred late at night, during the coldest part of the desert darkness. A block of limestone, perfectly shaped, perfectly fitted, already placed on the third layer of the pyramid, lifted itself a full inch off the ground, hovered for a moment, and set itself back down. No human saw it, but something else did. Far below the surface, in the chamber hidden beneath thousands of years of sand, a faint vibration moved through the stone. It had been dormant for millennia. Now, for the first time since the world was young, it stirred. Its spirals on its walls glowed, then dimmed, then glowed again. The awakening had begun. The next morning, Neferu noticed something he could not explain. The tool marks on the limestone blocks, every chisel line, every stripe, every carved groove had changed direction. They were no longer neat, sharp cuts. Now they curved, all of them. Every single tool mark on every block in the area had somehow bent into soft spirals, as if the stone itself had melted and twisted overnight. When he told his supervisor, the man frowned, stared at the blocks, and muttered something about heat distortion and irregular weather. But the night was cold, and stone did not melt. Not then. Not under those conditions. The workers exchanged glances. No one argued, but everyone felt a quiet unease. Something was happening. Something old. Something patient. 2 weeks later, a team of workers excavating the foundation discovered a deep shaft beneath the northern corner, one the architects swore they had not dug. The walls were smooth, almost polished, and unlike any Egyptian stonework. The spiral carvings descended in an orderly pattern, turning slowly in perfect alignment. A scribe suggested it might be a natural crevice, but natural rock did not form perfect spirals. They lowered a torch into the shaft. It fell for a long time, much longer than expected. When it finally landed, the flame tilted sideways, as if settling in a room where the air was not still. They lowered a rope. It slid down without resistance, without touching single wall. No one volunteered to climb in, so the shaft remained unexplored, for now. That night the hum returned. This time everyone heard it. It was faint at first, a low vibration beneath the stone floors of the work camp. Workers woke from sleep, confused. Guards looked toward the half-built pyramid, certain the sound was coming below it. The hum grew stronger, rising in pitch until it resembled a distant chorus, soft, echoing, layered with tones that did not belong to any human throat. When morning came, the hum faded, leaving behind an unsettling silence. But something had changed. The workers found their footprints in the sand altered. They were no longer human footprints. Each step had been reshaped overnight into small spirals, as if someone, something, had carefully redrawn them while everyone slept. A few men refused to return to work that day. They were replaced, but they were not forgotten. 6 days later, they disappeared completely. No tracks, no sign of struggle, just spirals. Everywhere, spirals.
The dull narrator. Scholars in Memphis heard rumors of the discovery and sent a young priest named Meret to investigate. She was quiet, observant, and known for her unusual ability to sense disturbances in places considered sacred or forbidden. When she arrived at the construction site, she studied the spiral carvings closely. Her fingertips traced the grooves, her brow furrowed. "These are not markings of worship," she said at last. "They are warnings." The overseers dismissed her. Construction continued. But Marette did not leave. She followed the humming at night, listening to the stone as if the stone itself were speaking to her. She stood near the shaft for hours, waiting for the air to shift. She watched workers carefully, noting who seemed restless, who seemed afraid, who seemed drawn to the spirals more than they should be. And after several nights, she too began to hear something beneath the hum. A voice, weak, muffled, calling from the depths of the shaft. It called her name. Marette knew no one believed her, and she knew the workers would never agree to descend into the shaft. So she waited until the moon was high, tied herself to a rope, and climbed down alone. The spiral walls passed slowly, then faster, then strangely, very slowly again, as though the shaft were adjusting its depth to match her descent. At last her feet touched solid ground. A faint blue glow illuminated the chamber. The air was thick, as if the room had been sealed for thousands of years, and yet the glow pulsed like something alive. She took a step. The chamber awakened. Spirals lit up all at once, spinning in patterns too complex to follow. The stone beneath her vibrated. The air thickened even more. She inhaled cautiously. That was when she saw it. A door, not carved from stone, but molded from some unknown material that seemed neither solid nor liquid. It shimmered like heat, but moved like cool water. And behind it, a shadow, standing, waiting, breathing. Her heart pounded. The shadow stepped closer. Its outline shifted, spiraling into existence like smoke pulled into the shape of a person. It spoke, not in words, not in sound, but directly into her mind. She staggered backward, gripping the rope, breath shallow. The chamber darkened, the spirals stopped, and then everything went silent. When the workers found the rope the next morning, it was intact, completely intact, not frayed, not cut, simply untied. Marette was gone, and the humming was louder than ever. This was only the beginning. The pyramid would rise, the chamber would open, and the thing beneath the sand, the thing older than the Nile, older than the pharaohs, older than anything that ever called Egypt home, would not stay hidden forever. What it wanted, what it remembered, and why it had awakened would change everything. That evening, the priests performed a cleansing ritual near the foundation. They lit incense. They recited slow, flat prayers. Their voices held no urgency and no emotion. The workers watched quietly. The smell of the incense rose into the air, and then, without warning, the smoke bent. It twisted into spirals. Every column of smoke rotated in the same direction, slow, deliberate, measured. Kassa lowered his prayer staff. Tua closed her eyes. Hineb said nothing. The smoke extended toward the shaft. It descended into it, and then it vanished. All three priests looked at one another. Only Hineb spoke. "The ground is listening," he said. Later that night, Hineb approached the overseers. He told them that the pyramid should not be built here. He said the land was disturbed. He said the chamber beneath should remain sealed. The overseers noted his concerns on another tablet. They placed the tablet in a storage basket. Then they continued construction exactly as before. The number of stones moved that day was the same as the day before. The workers reported the same number of hours. The architects checked the same angles. Everything remained perfectly predictable, except for the humming. It pulsed now, 2 slow vibrations, then silence, then 2 more, as if something beneath the sand was breathing. The following morning, a new discovery was made. A worker named Senu found a fragment of an object near the trench. It was not stone, it was not wood, it was not metal. It was a smooth, translucent material that none of them recognized. When he held it up to the sun, it refracted the light into spirals. When he touched it to the sand shifted away from it. He handed it to an overseer. The overseer set it aside and said it might belong to a broken tool. It did not belong to any tool. That night, the fragment was gone. In its place was a single spiral pressed into the ground. 2 days later, a worker collapsed while carrying a limestone block. He claimed he had heard a whisper, just one whisper, very faint, coming from beneath the stone he carried. He said the whisper called his name. He said it sounded like Medet's voice. The overseers dismissed him from his duties. They said heat exhaustion was common. They instructed him to rest. He did not rest. He wandered away from camp. By morning, he had vanished. No tracks, no trail, nothing but a spiral drawn into the sand where his footprints ended. The priests requested permission to descend into the shaft. Hineb said they must see the chamber for themselves. He said the situation was becoming less stable. The overseers declined. They said exploring the shaft would slow construction. They said the pharaoh demanded progress. Hineb did not argue. He simply stepped aside. His expression remained neutral. His posture did not change. But later, he quietly gathered Kasa and Tua. All 3 returned to the shaft at night. They brought no torches. They climbed down using the rope. They did not return. On the surface, life continued. Workers moved stones. Scribes recorded numbers. Engineers checked the slope of the ramp. Everything looked ordinary. Everything sounded ordinary, except for the humming. Now it echoed clearly across the entire site. The vibrations were stronger. The air felt heavier. The spirals appeared more frequently. Some workers ignored them. Others grew afraid. But no one left, not because they were forced to stay, but because something beneath the sand seemed to want them nearby. Deep underground, in the chamber no one had seen, the spirals glowed steadily. The door of shifting material pulsed. It expanded slightly, then contracted, as if preparing to open, as if waiting for the moment when the world above was unprepared, as if remembering something older than pyramids, older than kingdoms, older than all human memory. The awakening continued, slowly, quietly, predictably. The following morning began like all other mornings at the construction site. The workers woke before sunrise. They stood in small groups. They stretched their arms and legs. They ate simple meals of bread and onions. They walked to their assigned locations. The hum continued beneath them. It vibrated through the ground in slow intervals. Each vibration lasted longer than the last. Each pause between vibrations became shorter. The workers adjusted to it. They did not speak about it. People often adapted to strange things when explanations were not available. On this morning, a new spiral appeared. It was larger than any of the previous spirals. It stretched across nearly the entire northern edge of the foundation trench. Its grooves were deeper. Its curves were wider. Its center point was sharp and clean. The overseers ordered sand to be pushed over it. The workers obeyed. They shoveled sand into the grooves until the pattern vanished from sight. 2 hours later, the sand slid away by itself. The spiral reappeared in exactly the same place. No one touched it again. Later that day, 3 masons noticed something unusual inside one of the limestone blocks. The block was freshly cut. It had been carved at the quarry only the day before. When the masons examined the surface, they saw faint lines beneath the stone's outer layer. They scraped the surface carefully. The lines beneath grew clearer. They formed a pattern, a spiral, not carved, not etched, not scratched. It was part of the stone itself, a perfect spiral hidden inside the rock long before any human touched it. The masons said nothing to the overseers. They simply moved on to the next block. Later that day, the sky changed color. It shifted from bright blue to a pale washed-out silver. There were no clouds, no wind, no storm, just a faint silver tint that covered the sky evenly, as if the sunlight had passed through something thin and transparent. The workers looked up once, then they returned to their tasks. The overseer said it was a natural desert phenomenon. The sky remained silver for the rest of the day. That night, the humming did not stop. It continued without pause from sunset to sunrise. The vibration did not change speed. It did not change tone. It remained constant. Some workers reported difficulty sleeping. Others reported strange dreams. Most people said nothing. The next morning, the humming ceased. The silence was sharper than the sound. It felt like the absence of breathing. At dawn, the workers found something at the edge of the shaft. It was a piece of cloth. It was the same color and texture as the garments worn by the 3 priests who had descended into the shaft. The cloth was folded neatly. It was not torn. It was not dirty. It was not worn. It was lay alone on the ground, positioned perfectly over a shallow spiral in the sand. One overseer picked it up. He felt it was still warm. He placed it in a wooden box and sealed the lid tightly. No further discussion occurred. After the cloth was found, the workers began to speak more quietly than before. Their voices became softer. Their movements became slower. They avoided looking directly at the shaft. No one said why. Silence became a method of cooperation.
The dull narrator. 2 days later, something new emerged. It was not a spiral. It was not a glow. It was not a vibration. It was a sound. A faint clicking noise came from beneath the ground. The clicking was slow at first. It repeated every few seconds. Each click was identical in volume and rhythm. Over the course of the day, the clicking became faster. By nightfall, it was steady. Click, pause, click, pause, click. Workers turned toward the sound, but saw nothing. The ground did not move. The walls did not shift. The sand did not tremble. Only the clicking continued, all night. By morning, it stopped. At sunrise, Neferu noticed that the footprint patterns had changed again. This time, the spirals were larger. The sand inside them was smoother. No wind had caused it. No tools had touched it. The footprints led toward the pyramid. They stopped exactly at the center of the spiral, and then they vanished. Neferu followed the trail. He stood at the center point for a long time. He waited. Nothing happened. he returned to work. Work continued in predictable rhythm. Stone was lifted, stone was placed, sand was leveled, measurements were repeated, records were written. The workers followed the same steps every day. The overseers inspected the same areas. The architects confirmed the same calculations. The pyramid rose higher, and beneath it, the humming resumed. It sounded deeper now, more solid, more layered, as if multiple tones were forming a single unified sound. When the workers placed their hands on the ground, they could feel the vibration clearly. When they placed their ears on the stone blocks, they could hear faint echoes rising from below. The echoes did not form words. They did not form language. They formed patterns, patterns that matched the spirals carved into the earth. The patterns repeated, over and over, unchanging, steady, predictable. Far below, in the hidden chamber, the spirals glowed brighter than before. The shifting door pulsed with light. The shadow behind it moved slightly, just one step. Then it waited. It did not need to rush. The world above was preparing itself. The construction continued. The vibrations strengthened. The spirals multiplied. Everything was aligning, slowly, quietly, inevitably. The awakening continued. Days continued to pass at the construction site. The workers lifted stones. The overseers inspected their tasks. The architects measured angles that did not change. The scribes counted supplies that arrived on schedule. The pyramid grew taller. Its shape became clearer. Its structure became heavier. Underneath it, the vibrations became stronger. The humming no longer came and went. It remained constant. It did not rise or fall. It stayed at a single tone, steady, unbroken, predictable. Some workers stopped noticing it entirely. Others pretended they did not notice. In either case, life continued in the same pattern. One morning, a small crack appeared in the stone at the base of the pyramid's northern face. It was thin. It was straight. It did not appear significant. The overseers marked the crack with red paint and ordered repairs. Workers filled it with plaster. They smoothed the surface. The next morning, the crack had returned. It was slightly wider. The plaster had fallen out. The workers repeated the repairs. They pressed the plaster deeper. They added more stone to reinforce the gap. The following morning, the crack had widened again. This time, it was shaped like a spiral. The workers did not repair it again. Later that week, strange lights appeared near the base of the pyramid. They rose from the ground slowly. They drifted through the air in straight, even movements. They did not flicker. They did not brighten or dim. They remained at a constant glow. The workers observed the lights silently. They did not approach. They did not follow. They simply stepped aside when the lights moved past them. The lights traveled toward the shaft. They descended into it. When they reached the bottom, they disappeared. The humming grew louder. On the next night, a new sound emerged from beneath the ground. It was deeper than the humming. It was steady. It was slow, a single resonance. It did not resemble breathing. It did not resemble wind. It did not resemble any human voice. It resembled a heartbeat, a very slow heartbeat. It pulsed beneath the surface. It extended through the stone. It reached all the way to the unfinished tip of the pyramid. The workers felt it when they placed their hands on the ground. They felt it when they stood near any stone block. They felt it through the sand under their beds. The pulse repeated every few seconds. No one spoke about it. The following day, more spirals appeared. They formed in the sand around the entire construction site. Some were small, some were large, some overlapped with footprints, some formed beneath tools left on the ground. The spirals grew deeper as the day continued. By evening, the edges of the spirals were sharp enough to cut through cloth. The workers walked around them carefully. That night, a faint voice rose through the shaft. It was quiet. It did not sound urgent. It did not sound distressed. It simply spoke a single name, Neferu. The voice repeated his name several times. Each time it sounded the same, flat, emotionless. Neferu walked to the edge of the shaft. He stood beside it. He looked down. The air rising from below was colder than the desert night. He waited. The voice repeated his name one more time. Then it stopped. Neferu returned to his tent. He lay down. He closed his eyes. The humming continued beneath him. The next morning, Neferu was gone. His bed was undisturbed. His tools remained where he placed them. His sandals were positioned neatly near the tent door. A spiral had formed in the sand outside his tent. The center point of the spiral was empty.
After Neferu's disappearance, the overseers attempted to increase worker supervision. They created new schedules. They assigned new guard rotations. They implemented nightly head counts. None of these measures changed anything. The spirals continued to appear. The humming continued. The heartbeat continued. The lights continued. The cracks in the stone continued to widen. The chamber below continued to awaken. Deep underground, the spirals on the chamber walls glowed with consistent brightness. The shifting door pulsed in a steady rhythm. The shadow behind it had become clearer. Its outline resembled a human form, but it moved without bending joints. Its shape shifted smoothly, as if made of smoke or liquid. It took another step toward the door. The door thinned. It stretched. Its surface rippled. The shadow waited. The surface of the door rippled again. The shadow took one more step. The door began to dissolve. On the surface, the workers continued lifting stone blocks. The overseers continued inspecting. The architects continued measuring. But now the sunlight seemed dimmer. Shadows appeared longer. The air felt heavier. Each day, the pyramid grew taller. Each day, the ground grew warmer. Each day, the spirals deepened. By now, nearly half of the workers had disappeared. None of them left footprints leading away. None of them left signs of struggle. They simply vanished. In place of each vanished worker, a new spiral appeared, always perfectly shaped, always precisely formed, always centered. The overseers recorded the disappearances with lines on their tablets. The number of lines continued to grow. The shape of the tablets began to resemble faint spirals. One night, a tremor passed through the ground. It was small, barely noticeable. The workers assumed it was natural movement of the earth. The next morning, the tremor repeated, slightly stronger, still not significant. By the following day,
The tremor returned again. It lasted longer. It spread across the entire site. It reached the riverbank. It reached the quarry. It reached the surrounding desert. The tremor continued until sunset. Then it stopped. All the spirals glowed faintly for several seconds. Then the light faded. The next dawn arrived quietly. No trembling, no clicking, no changing sky. The workers assembled as usual. They prepared to move the next set of stones. But before they could begin, the humming beneath the ground stopped. For the first time in many weeks, there was complete silence. No vibration, no pulse, no sound. The overseers paused. The workers paused. Everyone looked toward the shaft. They waited. Nothing happened. After several minutes, work resumed. Halfway through the morning, the silence broke. A single deep tone rose from beneath the sand. It echoed across the site. It vibrated through stone and bone alike. The tone remained steady. It did not rise. It did not fall. It simply held. The workers dropped their tools. The overseers stepped back. Everyone turned toward the shaft. The tone grew louder. The sand around the shaft shifted in wide circles. The circles overlapped. They formed enormous spirals. The spirals deepened. The ground cracked along the spiral edges. The cracks widened slowly, predictably, uniformly. Light rose from the cracks. It glowed blue, then white, then a faint metallic color that did not resemble sunlight or firelight. The tone grew louder still. The surface of the shaft glowed. The ground beneath the pyramid trembled. The chamber below opened. The door dissolved completely. The shadow stepped through. The figure rose from the chamber. Its form was smooth. Its outline changed constantly. Its surface reflected the surrounding sand. It moved without sound. It did not hurry. It did not slow. It emerged from the shaft. It stood on the surface. It looked at the pyramid. The humming returned. The spirals across the site glowed. The figure raised its arm. The ground beneath the pyramid shifted. It did not collapse. It did not crack. It simply adjusted its shape. The pyramid settled into perfect alignment with the spirals below. The workers watched without speaking. They did not run. They did not scream. They remained still. The overseers stepped backwards slightly. Their expressions did not change. The figure lowered its arm. The humming stopped. The spirals faded. The light dimmed. The figure dissolved into the air, slowly, predictably, without urgency. It left no trace behind. When the figure vanished, the ground became still. The sand settled. The cracks closed. The spirals faded completely. Everything became silent. The workers stood motionless. After several minutes, they returned to their tasks. They lifted stones. They moved sand. They repeated measurements. The overseers recorded progress. The scribes wrote new numbers. Construction continued. The pyramid grew taller. The humming never returned. The shaft remained open, but no one approached it again. Meret did not return. Heneb did not return. The vanished workers did not return. Nothing rose from the chamber again. The spiral stopped forming. The strange lights no longer appeared. The sky returned to normal. The desert returned to silence. The work continued. Stone after stone,
day after day until the pyramid was finished. Years later, the shaft was sealed under new layers of stone. Centuries passed, the desert shifted, the kingdom changed, the people changed, the pyramid remained. Beneath it, the ancient chamber stayed silent. The spirals remained etched on its walls. The dissolved doorway no longer pulsed. The shadow did not return. But deep under the sand, in silence and darkness, the chamber waited, very patiently, for something, or for someone. No one knew what, no one asked, and the desert kept its secrets, predictably, quietly, forever. The end.